Hi, my name's Jonathan Clark. Thanks for checking out this video. It's one of my Ableton questions and answers, Ableton Q&A videos. Today I want to talk about making some clarifications on warping and global tempo in Ableton Live. Now, I don't know if you've seen some of the other videos that I've done about making DJ mixes or doing live performances, live DJing performances in Ableton, but I did have, I had a very specific video about warping and I touched on it in a bunch of other videos, and I maybe didn't explain quite carefully enough because I've had quite a few questions about it since then. So hopefully this is a very simple, short, quick overall review and simplification of the whole concept. So first of all, I want to talk about what is a warped track. Okay, in Ableton, if you're going to use Ableton for beat mixing music, the tracks have to be warped. And what warping does is it puts a bunch of tags into a track so that it follows the global tempo. Okay, so let's look at the screen. Okay, in this example, okay, whenever I click on one of the clips in my Ableton session, the waveform view can be shown down here at the bottom. Now, if you don't see the waveform view when you click on a clip, hit your tab key, because the tab key, hit the shift tab key, because you may be in effects view. Anyway, hitting it toggles back and forth, and so get it up so you can see a waveform. Anyway, over here you'll see a button, it's yellow, it says warp, and you can see that there's warp markers, these things, on my clip, on my track. Okay, if I had turned warp off, those warp markers have disappeared now, so this track is not currently warped. It has been warped, in the background it's warped, but as far as this particular session goes, Ableton thinks it is not warped. Okay, if I click it again, turns back on, you can see my yellow markers again. Now, I've gone through and put these yellow markers in place before. If you want to know how to do that really well, look at my big warping video. But anyway, so what happens when you drag a song or track into Ableton, depending on how your preferences are set. So let's look at options, preferences, and if you click on this tab here, there's a section that says auto warp long samples on. If you've got a very short sample, a loop or something, it's going to be automatically warped. But for longer things like a real song, this button determines whether or not Ableton automatically turns the warp button on when it comes in. Is this important? No, not really, because any song, whether it's warped or not when it comes in, you can change that. Okay, so that's just kind of a convenient thing. I usually work with dance music, so I usually make sure that options, preferences, boom, this thing is turned on, so I don't have to click warp every single time. I don't have to activate warp on every single clip as I go through it. Okay, so now, I said earlier that the warped track will follow the global tempo of what you're playing. Okay, let's look at these. Let's look at a couple of these tracks in this set. You can see right here, segment BPM, and up here is my global tempo. Let's ignore this global tempo for a minute, which happens to be 128, happens to be the same speed as the individual track. This piece down here tells you what the original tempo of the underlying track was. Okay, so this track was at 128 beats per minute when it was produced. If I click on another one, Christian Varela, this one's only at 125 beats per minute. John Aquaviva and friends, this one's 125 beats per minute. Sebastian Leder, 126 BPM. Okay, so every track in this set may be a different BPM. And they don't, quite often they will come out as round numbers, because when somebody's producing a song, they usually pick a round number of beats per minute, 126, 128, 130, whatever. You can occasionally, if you look at this one, 125.01, not quite sure why it's not exactly 125. It could be that the, I don't know, maybe he said it that way. Maybe it was just that when the software he was using to produce the track output his final version, it got sped up a little bit somehow. Maybe that happened in the mastering process. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But you can see 126, 125, 124, 126, 127, 125, 126. You can see that almost all of these are different tempos. So if I'm trying to play these back and beat mix them, how do they stay synced? Well, it's because every one of them has been warped. Every one of them is going to play back at the speed of the global tempo. Okay? So I've got my global tempo set to 128. This pink track here that started out at 126, that's what the MP3 or the WAV file is at as its original tempo. It doesn't matter because I've warped and because my tempo is 128, it is going to play at 128 beats per minute, not the 126 that the original's at. Okay? So let's play something. Okay, so that's playing right now at 128. Can I drag up or down? Yes. Okay, so I just changed it to 126. So now it's actually playing at its original tempo, just by coincidence. I can change this a lot. I can go down to, say, 89 beats per minute, go up to 113 beats per minute, and go to 164 beats per minute, whatever. There's a huge range. But generally, tracks are going to sound best within about 10% plus or minus of their original tempo. So for something that started at 126, I'd probably want to play it between 120 and 130, 132, something like that. Okay? So every single track in this set is going to play back at 128. Okay? That's the most important thing to know. A lot of people are confused by that. They don't understand that the warping makes the track play back at the global tempo. Like I say, you can adjust this tempo as you're playing, so that's not a problem. I think that's really all you need to know. It's very basic. Just remember, oh, and of course, if you have a track, let's say that you're playing rock music, you don't want that warped, you want it playing at its original speed, or even ambient EDM, something like that, chill out music. If you turn warp off, it will still play. So let's try and play it. Okay? So the only difference is when warp is turned off, it is not going to be playing back at this 133. It's not going to play at the global tempo. It is going to play at its original speed of 126. So that's not very common if you're doing a dance set of conventional electronic music, but like I say, ambient and some other types of music you might play without the warping turned on. Okay, I think that's it. Thanks.